The notification chimed at 5:47 a.m., cutting through the silence of our bedroom like a blade. Megan's phone, lying face up on her nightstand, glowed with a text from someone named B, a contact I'd never seen before in 3 years of marriage. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at those words, my coffee mug frozen halfway to my lips. Outside our smart home's floor-to-ceiling windows, storm clouds gathered over Portland's skyline, matching the Tempest building in my chest. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent the last decade as a cybersecurity consultant, protecting other people's secrets, while my own wife had been hiding hers behind a password I could crack in 30 seconds. Megan stirred beside me, her auburn hair splayed across the Egyptian cotton pillowcase I'd bought for our anniversary. She looked peaceful, innocent even. The same face that had whispered, "I love you," just yesterday morning was the same one that had apparently whispered other things to someone called B last night. "Morning, babe," she mumbled, reaching for her phone without opening her eyes. I watched her face change as she read the message. The color drained from her cheeks, and her green eyes snapped to mine with the guilty panic of a shoplifter caught red-handed. "Jason, I can explain. Can you?" I set down my mug with deliberate calm. "Because I'm genuinely curious how you explain being with someone else while I was working a 16-hour shift securing the hospital's network against ransomware attacks. You know, that little job that pays for this house, your BMW, and those Louboutin heels you bought last week." She sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest as if modesty mattered now. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that my wife of 3 years has been screwing someone behind my back. Am I wrong?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, the first drops of rain began pelting our smart home's reinforced windows. The house's automated system dimmed the lights in response to the darkening sky, casting shadows across Megan's face that made her look like a stranger. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she whispered. Ah, there it is. The truth finally makes an appearance. I stood up, my 6-foot frame towering over her. "So the question isn't whether you've been cheating. It's how long you've been lying to my face about it." Her phone buzzed again. Another message from B. "Meeting at the Harbor View Hotel at 9 room 247. I couldn't help but laugh, a cold, bitter sound that surprised even me. "The Harbor View? Really? You couldn't even spring for the Eastland Park. I guess I know where I rank in your priorities." "Jason, please, let me explain." "No need to explain anything, sweetheart. You're free now." I walked to our bedroom's smart panel and began typing. "In fact, let me help you with that freedom." My fingers flew across the touchscreen, accessing our home's security system. With a few keystrokes, I removed Megan's biometric access from every lock in the house. Her fingerprints, her facial recognition data, her voice commands, all deleted from the system I'd personally installed and configured. "What are you doing?" She scrambled out of bed, grabbing her silk robe. "Updating our home security. Can't be too careful these days. You never know who might try to break in." I changed the alarm codes next, then disabled her smartphone's connection to our network. There, all done. The panic in her eyes was almost satisfying. Almost. "You can't lock me out of my own house." "Our house," I corrected, pulling up the mortgage documents on my tablet. "Funny thing about paperwork, Megan. Remember when you were too busy with that important client dinner to come to the bank? I signed everything myself. Sole ownership has its perks." She rushed to the walk-in closet, frantically stuffing clothes into her Louis Vuitton suitcase, another purchase funded by my sleepless nights and weekend work. I watched her panic with the detached interest of a scientist observing a lab rat in a maze. "This is insane, Jason. You can't just..." "Can't what? Protect myself from a cheating wife?" Watch this. I opened our banking app and began transferring funds. Joint savings to my personal account, joint checking to my personal account. The credit cards she'd maxed out buying God knows what for God knows who, all canceled with a few taps. "You're being ridiculous," she screamed, throwing a handful of jewelry into her bag. "It was just a mistake." "A mistake?" I pulled up her text history, scrolling through weeks of messages with B that painted a very different picture. Brandon Lee, real estate developer. Married, 2 kids, drives a Tesla Model S. You've been planning weekend getaways, talking about leaving your boring husband, and sharing some very intimate photos. That's not a mistake, Megan. That's a choice. Her face went white. "How did you—" "I'm a cybersecurity expert, remember? Your cloud backup has been syncing to our shared family account for months. Every text, every photo, every hotel reservation. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the charges to the harbor view appearing on our credit card statement?" The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the windows like an impatient crowd. Our neighbor, Mrs. Gable, was already at her kitchen window across the street, coffee mug in hand, watching our house with the intensity of someone binge-watching their favorite drama series. "I want half of everything," Megan said, her voice turning cold and calculating. "I'm entitled to it." Entitled. I savored the word like a fine wine. You know what's funny about entitlement, Megan? It requires actually being entitled to something. Adultery tends to complicate divorce settlements in Maine, especially when there's documentation. I gestured to my tablet, where screenshots of her conversations with Brandon painted a vivid picture of their affair. Her face in his hotel room mirror. Their plans to spend my money on romantic getaways. Her complaints about having to pretend to love that tech nerd while she figured out her exit strategy. "You wouldn't," she breathed. "Try me." I walked to the bedroom window and opened the smart blinds with a voice command. "House, display weather forecast." The automated system's pleasant female voice filled the room. "Current conditions, heavy rain, temperature 42 degrees, chance of precipitation, 95%. "Perfect day for moving out," I observed. "Your suitcase is packed, your boyfriend is waiting at the hotel, and I've even called you an Uber. It should be here in about 10 minutes. "This isn't over, Jason." "You're absolutely right. It's just beginning." By noon, I was sitting in my downtown office, watching security footage of Megan discovering she couldn't get back into our house. My business partner, Alex Chen, a former Marine turned network security specialist, was hunched over his workstation, occasionally glancing at my laptop screen with undisguised admiration. "Damn, brother," Alex said, shaking his head. "She's been out there for 20 minutes pressing that doorbell like it owes her money." On screen, Megan stood on our front porch in the pouring rain, her designer clothes soaked through, frantically jabbing at the smart doorbell and shouting at the camera. The audio pickup caught every word of her increasingly desperate pleas. "Jason, I know you can hear me. This is ridiculous. Open the door." I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, sipping coffee from my favorite mug, a gift from last year's cybersecurity conference that read, "I fix things you didn't know were broken." The irony wasn't lost on me. "She looks cold," observed Toby, our 22-year-old IT specialist, peering over my shoulder with the morbid fascination of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. "She'll figure it out," I replied, minimizing the security feed. "She's a resourceful woman. After all, she managed to coordinate a months-long affair while convincing me she was working late every Tuesday and Thursday." Alex wheeled his chair over, his expression serious. "So what's the plan? Because if you're just going to change the locks and move on, you're a better man than me. What she did?" He shook his head. I pulled up Megan's cloud backup on my secondary monitor. Months of data spread across the screen like evidence at a crime scene. Text messages, photos, hotel reservations, restaurant receipts, a complete digital trail of her double life. "The plan," I said slowly, "is to give her exactly what she wanted. Freedom, independence, The chance to see how well she does without the safety net she's been taking for granted. Toby, who despite his youth had a talent for reading between lines, grinned. Oh, this is going to be good. I started with her professional life. Megan worked at Coastal Properties, one of Portland's most prestigious real estate firms. Their entire digital infrastructure was hosted on a cloud platform I'd personally secured 2 years ago when they'd suffered a data breach. The IT director owed me several favors. Toby, remember that security audit we did for Coastal Properties? The one where we found all those vulnerabilities in their client database? Yeah, what about it? I seem to recall finding some interesting discrepancies in their agent activity reports, falsified client meetings, inflated expense reports, that sort of thing. I pulled up the files I'd archived from that audit. Purely hypothetical question. If someone were to anonymously tip off the managing partner about potential ethics violations, how long do you think it would take them to launch an internal investigation? Alex's grin was predatory. In this economy? With real estate firms cutting agents left and right? I'd say about 5 minutes after they got the email. I composed a detailed professional message to Harold Westbrook, Coastal Properties managing partner. No accusations, just concerns about irregular activity patterns in certain agent accounts, backed by data that painted a clear picture of Megan's creative approach to expense reporting. Send it from the anonymous tip line, I told Toby. Make sure it routes through our VPN so it can't be traced back here. While Toby worked his magic, I turned my attention to Megan's personal finances. Our joint accounts were already locked down, but she had a personal credit card I'd been paying off each month like a dutiful husband. Not anymore. I called the bank and explained that I'd be removing myself as an authorized user and would no longer be responsible for the account. The customer service representative was sympathetic when I mentioned the divorce proceedings. I understand completely, sir. We see this situation frequently. The account holder will be responsible for all charges moving forward, and the minimum payment is due on the 15th of each month. Perfect. Megan's shopping habits would catch up with her quickly without my income backing her spending sprees. My phone buzzed with a text from Carmen Rodriguez, Megan's assistant at the real estate office. Carmen and I had always gotten along well. She was smart, observant, and had little patience for Megan's entitled attitude. Hey Jason, heard about you and Megan. Sorry, but not surprised. She's been acting weird for months. Coffee sometime? I stared at that message for a long moment. Carmen was offering sympathy, but more importantly, she was offering information. As Megan's assistant, she had access to schedules, client lists, and office gossip. In the right hands, that information could be invaluable. Thanks, Carmen. Actually, I could use someone to talk to. Are you free for lunch? We met at a small cafe downtown, away from the real estate district where Carmen might be recognized. She was a petite woman in her late 20s, with sharp brown eyes and the kind of street smarts that came from growing up working class in South Portland. I knew something was up, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee. All those client meetings that never appeared on her calendar, the way she'd change her clothes before leaving the office. And Brandon Lee's been calling the office way more than any normal client would. Brandon Lee? I kept my voice neutral, though my pulse quickened. Big shot developer, married but acts like he's God's gift to women. He's been sniffing around Megan for months, and she's been eating it up. Honestly, Jason, I felt bad for you. She'd complain about you constantly, said you were boring, that you worked too much, that she deserved better. The words stung, but they also fueled my resolve. What kind of complaints? The usual entitled princess stuff. You didn't take her on expensive enough vacations. You focused too much on work. You weren't ambitious like Brandon. Carmen rolled her eyes. Meanwhile, you're the one paying for her BMW and those designer handbags she carries around like trophies. I leaned forward. Carmen, can I ask you a favor? And before you answer, know that I understand if you say no. I don't want to put your job at risk. She studied my face carefully. What kind of favor? I think Megan's been using company resources for personal business. Fake client meetings, inflated expenses, that sort of thing. If someone were to look into her activity over the past few months, they might find some interesting patterns. Carmen was quiet for a long moment, then smiled slowly. You know what, Jason? Megan's been treating me like her personal servant for 2 years, making me cover for her lies, clean up her mistakes, work late because she couldn't be bothered to finish her own reports. Maybe it's time someone looked into those client meetings she's been having. I'm not asking you to do anything that could get you in trouble. You're not asking me to do anything at all, she interrupted. But if Harold Westbrook happened to ask me about Megan's schedule over the past few months, I'd have to tell him the truth. And the truth is that she's been lying about where she goes and what she does with company time. By the time I got back to the office, Toby had already sent the anonymous tip to Coastal Properties. Alex was monitoring Megan's social media accounts, watching for any changes in her posting patterns. She's been quiet all day, he reported. Last post was yesterday evening, some inspirational quote about living your truth or something equally nauseating. That's about to change, I predicted. Once Harold starts asking questions, she's going to panic, and when Megan panics, she makes mistakes. As if on cue, my phone rang. Megan's number flashed on the screen. Jason, we need to talk. I thought we already did that this morning, when you were explaining how you never meant for me to find out about your affair. Don't be an ass. I'm at the Harbor View, and my credit card was declined. The bank says you removed yourself from the account. That's correct. Funny how quickly financial independence becomes a problem when you actually have to be independent. This is temporary insanity, Jason. You're going to calm down, we're going to work this out, and things will go back to normal. I almost laughed. Normal? You mean the normal where you lie to my face every day while screwing another man? That normal? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. But here's the thing, Megan. You wanted out of this marriage. You just wanted to keep all the benefits while you figured out your exit strategy. Well, congratulations, you're out. No safety net, no joint accounts, no house key. You got exactly what you wanted. You can't just abandon me. I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting you free. Isn't that what you told Brandon you wanted? Freedom from your boring husband? The silence on the other end was deafening. How did you... I told you this morning. I know everything. Every text, every photo, every plan you made to leave me once you figured out how to maximize your payout. The only thing I don't know is why you thought I'd just sit there and take it. Jason, please. I made a mistake. We can fix this. No, Megan, we can't. But don't worry. You'll figure it out. You're a strong, independent woman, right? Time to prove it. I hung up and turned back to my computer. Phase 1 was complete. Megan was cut off from our shared resources and facing questions about her professional conduct. But this was just the beginning. Alex looked up from his workstation. What's next? I pulled up Brandon Lee's social media profiles. Married father of 2, successful real estate developer, pillar of the community. His Instagram was full of family photos and inspirational business quotes. His LinkedIn profile boasted about his integrity and commitment to excellence. Now we let the community know what kind of man Brandon Lee really is. The Harbor View Hotel sat on Portland's waterfront like a guilty secret trying to hide in plain sight. It was the kind of place that catered to business travelers on expense accounts and locals conducting affairs they couldn't afford to have discovered. At $90 a night, it was cheap enough to avoid scrutiny, but clean enough to maintain the illusion of respectability. I'd been watching the hotel's parking lot from my car for 30 minutes when Brandon Lee's silver Tesla Model S pulled into a space near the back entrance. Even from a distance, I could see his self-satisfied smile as he checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. He was a handsome man in that generic real estate developer way. Perfectly styled hair, expensive suit, the kind of artificial confidence that came from a lifetime of having doors opened for him. Megan's BMW arrived 10 minutes later. She'd managed to get her credit card situation resolved, probably by calling her parents and spinning some story about a banking error. She looked nervous as she walked toward the hotel entrance, constantly checking her phone and glancing around the parking lot. I waited until they'd both entered the building, then pulled out my laptop and connected to the hotel's Wi-Fi network. The Harbor View's cybersecurity was about as sophisticated as their continental breakfast. A few minutes of probing revealed multiple vulnerabilities in their guest services system. "Too easy," I muttered, accessing their room management interface. Room 247 was registered to B. Lee with a credit card that would probably be expensed as a client meeting. The room's smart TV was connected to the hotel's network, which meant it was connected to me. I crafted a simple message and pushed it to the television in their room. "Smile for the camera, cheaters. Hope you're enjoying your afternoon. A concerned citizen." My phone buzzed with a call from Toby. "Boss, you need to see this. Carmen just sent me something interesting." "What kind of interesting?" "The kind where Megan's about to have a very bad day at work. Harold Westbrook called her into his office an hour ago. Carmen was asked to pull all of Megan's client files and expense reports for the past 6 months. Perfect timing. While Megan was dealing with questions about her professional conduct, she was also trying to enjoy her illicit afternoon with Brandon. The stress would be eating her alive. "There's more," Toby continued. "Carmen says Harold looked pissed. Apparently Megan's been claiming mileage reimbursements for client visits that never happened. We're talking about thousands of dollars in fraudulent expense claims." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Keep me posted," I said, then turned my attention back to the hotel's network. The Harbor View's fire safety system was integrated with their smart room controls, a modern convenience that allowed automated evacuation procedures. With a few keystrokes, I triggered a fire alarm for the 3rd floor. Not the entire building, just the floor where room 247 was located. My phone rang immediately. Alex's voice was gleeful. "Please tell me you're watching the hotel's front entrance right now." I shifted my position to get a better view of the building's main exit. "Why would I be doing that?" "Because Megan and her boyfriend just came running out in their bathrobes looking like they've seen a ghost. There are about 20 other guests standing around in various states of undress, and someone's taking pictures." Through my car window, I could see the chaos unfolding. Hotel guests clustered on the sidewalk while firefighters arrived to investigate the alarm. Megan stood near the back of the crowd, clutching a hotel bathrobe around herself, her face red with embarrassment and fury. Brandon was trying to shield his face from the growing crowd of onlookers. But the real prize was Carmen, who happened to be walking past the hotel with her phone out, recording the entire scene. She caught Megan's panicked expression, Brandon's attempts to hide, and the unmistakable body language of 2 people who'd been caught in the act. "This is going to be all over social media in about 5 minutes, Alex observed. "Probably less," I agreed, watching Carmen upload the video to Instagram with strategic hashtags. And since Carmen works in real estate, her followers include most of Megan's colleagues. My phone buzzed with an angry text from Megan. "I know this was you," I replied. "I have no idea what you're talking about, but I heard there was some excitement at the Harbor View today. Hope everyone's safe." 20 minutes later, the firefighters determined it was a false alarm and guests were allowed back into the building. But the damage was done. Carmen's video had been shared dozens of times, and the comments were brutal. "Isn't that Megan Cole from Coastal Properties? OMG, she's married. That's not her husband. Professional behavior from our local realtors. Someone's about to be single." My phone rang. Harold Westbrook's name appeared on the screen. We'd worked together on several cybersecurity projects, and he had my number for IT emergencies. "Jason, I hate to bother you, but I need some advice about a personnel matter." "Of course, Harold. What can I help you with?" "It's about your wife, actually. We've discovered some irregularities in her expense reports, and now there's this video circulating online." He paused, clearly uncomfortable. I know this puts you in an awkward position, but I have to ask, were you aware of any issues with Megan's professional conduct? I chose my words carefully. Harold, I can't speak to Megan's work performance. That's between you and her. But I can tell you that I recently discovered she's been having an affair with Brandon Lee, and we're getting divorced. If that information is relevant to your personnel decisions, you have it. I see. I'm sorry to hear that, Jason. This is a very difficult situation. I understand completely. You have a business to protect and a reputation to maintain. Do what you need to do. After hanging up, I sat in my car and watched the hotel for another hour. Megan and Brandon eventually emerged, fully dressed, but visibly shaken. They had a heated conversation in the parking lot, lots of pointing and gesticulating that suggested their romantic afternoon had turned into a crisis management session. Brandon left first, his Tesla squealing out of the parking lot like he was fleeing a crime scene. Megan sat in her BMW for a long time, probably dealing with phone calls and text messages as the video continued to spread across social media. When she finally drove away, I followed at a distance. Instead of heading home, a home she could no longer access, she drove to her parents' house in Cape Elizabeth. The Donnelly family had money, old Portland money that came from shipping and real estate investments. They lived in a sprawling colonial on the water, the kind of house that screamed, "We've been here longer than you." I parked down the street and watched Megan's reunion with her family. Even from a distance, I could see the animated conversation on the front porch. Her father, Patrick Donnelly, was a red-faced man who'd made his fortune in construction. Her mother, Susan, was the kind of woman who measured her worth in country club memberships and charity board positions. They'd never liked me. I was too working class, too focused on my career, not ambitious enough for their precious daughter. They'd tolerated me because Megan seemed happy, but I'd always sensed their disapproval lurking beneath their polite smiles. Now, watching them comfort their daughter after her public humiliation, I felt a cold satisfaction. They'd wanted better for Megan than a boring cybersecurity consultant. Well, now they could see what better looked like. My phone buzzed with a text from Alex. Coastal Properties just posted on their website, Megan Cole is no longer with the company, effective immediately. I smiled and started my car. Phase 2 was complete. Megan had lost her job, her reputation was in ruins, and her affair was public knowledge. But I wasn't done yet. Brandon Lee still thought he could walk away from this without consequences. He was about to learn otherwise. Brandon Lee lived in Falmouth Foreside, one of Portland's most exclusive neighborhoods, in a custom-built contemporary house that probably cost more than most people made in a decade. The property sat on 2 acres of manicured lawn, with a circular driveway that showcased his collection of expensive toys. The Tesla, a BMW motorcycle, and a boat trailer that suggested weekend adventures on Casco Bay. I'd spent the evening researching Brandon's business dealings, and what I found was fascinating. Lee Development Group had several projects in various stages of completion around southern Maine, but their financing was more creative than their architecture. Shell companies, private investors, and a complex web of loans that suggested Brandon was leveraging every asset he could find to maintain his lifestyle. More interesting was his marriage. Jennifer Lee was a pediatric nurse at Maine Medical Center, a woman who'd clearly married Brandon before his success went to his head. Their social media profiles told a story of growing disconnect. Her posts focused on their children and her work, while his were all about business achievements and expensive purchases. "This guy's house of cards is already wobbling," Alex observed, reviewing the financial documents I'd pulled from public records. "He's got 3 mortgages on this house alone, and his business credit lines are maxed out. Which means he can't afford any disruptions to his income stream," I replied. "Good to know." Toby looked up from his workstation. "I've been monitoring his email and social media accounts. Guy's panicking. He's been trying to reach Megan all evening, but she's not responding. And get this, he's supposed to close on a major development deal next week, but the investors are getting nervous about some rumors they've heard." "What kind of rumors?" The kind that happen when someone anonymously tips off the Portland Business Journal about potential ethics violations in local real estate deals. I raised an eyebrow. Someone did that? Someone who knows how to make anonymous tips look like they came from concerned citizens rather than vengeful husbands, Toby grinned. Hypothetically speaking. My phone buzzed with a call from Carmen. She'd been feeding me information all day, and her updates were more valuable than gold. Jason, you need to know what happened at the office today. After Harold fired Megan, she came back tonight and tried to get into the building. Security had to escort her out. What was she trying to do? She claimed she left personal items in her desk, but I think she was trying to delete files from her computer. The IT guy said someone had been trying to access her account remotely all afternoon. Interesting. Megan was trying to cover her tracks, which meant she knew how much trouble she was in. But she was too late. I'd already copied everything I needed from her work accounts during my initial reconnaissance. There's something else, Carmen continued. I overheard Harold on the phone with the State Real Estate Commission. He's filing a formal complaint about Megan's conduct. If they find violations, she could lose her license. That's unfortunate, I said, though my tone suggested otherwise. Jason, can I ask you something? This whole thing with Megan and Brandon, how long have you been planning your response? I haven't been planning anything, Carmen. I've just been reacting to circumstances as they develop. She laughed. Right. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence that everything's falling apart for both of them at exactly the same time. Sometimes the universe has a sense of justice. After hanging up, I turned my attention to Brandon's immediate situation. According to his social media posts, he had a client dinner tomorrow night at the Portland Harbor Hotel, a much more upscale venue than the Harbor View where he'd been meeting Megan. This dinner was with potential investors for his next development project, a luxury condominium complex in the Old Port. Toby, how hard would it be to create a fake online profile for a concerned citizen who's worried about Brandon Lee's business practices? About as hard as making coffee. Why? Because those investors deserve to know what kind of man they're potentially doing business with. A man who cheats on his wife, conducts affairs during business hours, and has been the subject of recent ethics complaints. You want me to create a fake whistleblower? I want you to create a platform for truth-telling. What people choose to do with that platform is up to them. While Toby worked on the technical aspects, I focused on content. The video of Megan and Brandon's hotel evacuation was already circulating, but it needed context. I created a detailed timeline of their affair, complete with dates, locations, and receipts. Nothing that couldn't be verified through public records or social media posts. The story I crafted was simple. Brandon Lee, married father and local businessman, had been conducting an affair with a subordinate in the real estate industry. This relationship had involved misuse of company resources, fraudulent expense claims, and a pattern of deception that raised questions about his character and business ethics. This is brutal, Alex said, reading over my shoulder. You're not just exposing the affair, you're dismantling his entire professional reputation. I'm providing information that potential business partners might find relevant to their investment decisions. You're destroying his life. I'm giving him the same consideration he gave my marriage. The fake whistleblower profile went live at midnight, posted to several local business forums and social media groups. By morning, Brandon's client dinner was canceled. By afternoon, 2 of his current projects had lost their financing. By evening, his wife had changed her Facebook status to, "It's complicated." But I wasn't finished yet. Brandon's Tesla was his pride and joy, a symbol of his success and environmental consciousness. It was also connected to the internet, which made it vulnerable to the same kind of remote access I'd used on our smart home systems. This is probably illegal, Toby warned as I explained what I wanted him to do. Probably, but it's also temporary and harmless. We're not going to hurt anyone or cause an accident. We're just going to give Brandon a small taste of what it feels like to lose control. The next evening, as Brandon left his office for what was supposed to be a damage control meeting with his remaining investors, his Tesla experienced a series of minor malfunctions. The air conditioning turned to maximum heat. The radio switched to a Christian talk station and locked on that frequency. The GPS system directed him to the Harborview Hotel instead of his intended destination. Each malfunction lasted just long enough to be annoying, then corrected itself, before Brandon could prove anything was wrong. By the time he reached his meeting, 30 minutes late and visibly flustered, his carefully maintained composure had cracked. The investors, already nervous about the rumors circulating online, took one look at Brandon's sweaty, agitated appearance and decided to postpone their decision indefinitely. My phone rang as I was watching the security footage from Brandon's office building, observing his increasingly frantic behavior. "Jason." Megan's voice was cold, controlled, dangerous. "We need to talk." "I thought we already covered everything we needed to discuss." "You're destroying innocent people's lives." "Innocent." I almost laughed. That's an interesting choice of words. Brandon has a family, children. You're hurting people who had nothing to do with this. You should have thought about that before you started screwing him. Actions have consequences, Megan. You taught me that. This has gone far enough. I'm prepared to make you a deal. I'm listening. I'll give you an uncontested divorce. No alimony, no property claims, no legal battles. Clean break. But you have to stop whatever you're doing to Brandon. I considered her offer for exactly 3 seconds. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. You don't get to negotiate the terms of your surrender after you've already lost the war. You wanted to play games with people's lives? Congratulations. You're playing in the major leagues now. Jason, please. Here's my counteroffer, Megan. You disappear from my life completely. No contact, no attempts at reconciliation, no showing up at places where I might be. In exchange, I won't release the really damaging information I have about both of you. What information? The kind that involves the IRS and the State Attorney General's office. The kind that turns civil matters into criminal ones. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. I'll be in touch, I said, and hung up. Phase 3 was complete. Both Megan and Brandon were isolated, financially damaged, and professionally ruined. But I still had one more move to make. The final phase would be public, permanent, and devastating. The Portland Downtown Business Association's annual charity gala was the kind of event where local power brokers gathered to see and be seen while writing tax-deductible checks to worthy causes. This year's beneficiary was the Maine Children's Hospital, which meant the guest list would include everyone who mattered in Portland's business and social circles. Brandon Lee had been scheduled to receive an award for Community Leadership in Development, an honor that now seemed laughably inappropriate given recent revelations about his character. The award committee had quietly removed his name from the program, but his table reservation remained active. I'd purchased my own ticket through a corporate sponsorship from my cybersecurity firm. As a local business owner with contracts throughout the medical and financial sectors, I was exactly the kind of person who belonged at such events. The fact that I'd never attended before would make my presence more memorable. "You sure about this?" Alex asked as we reviewed the final preparations. "Once you do this, there's no taking it back. You'll be burning bridges you might need someday." "The bridges were already burned," I replied, adjusting my tie in the men's room mirror of the Portland Harbor Hotel. "I'm just making sure everyone can see the smoke." The gala was being held in the hotel's grand ballroom, a space that could accommodate 300 guests for dinner and dancing. The evening's program included cocktails, a silent auction, dinner, speeches from hospital administrators, and the presentation of several community service awards. I arrived during the cocktail hour, when the room was filled with the comfortable buzz of successful people networking over premium liquor. The atmosphere was warm, collegial, and completely unsuspecting. Megan was there, of course, She'd managed to secure an invitation through her parents' social connections, probably hoping to begin rehabilitating her damaged reputation. She wore a black evening gown that I recognized from our happier days, and she'd styled her hair in the elegant updo that had made me fall in love with her at a similar event 3 years ago. She looked beautiful, poised, and completely out of place among people who now knew her as the disgraced real estate agent from the hotel scandal. Brandon was notably absent. His business was collapsing, his marriage was in crisis, and his legal troubles were mounting. The last thing he needed was to show his face at a public event where his humiliation would be on full display. I spent the first hour of the event networking legitimately, discussing cybersecurity concerns with hospital administrators and exchanging business cards with potential clients. Several people mentioned the recent unpleasantness with my wife, offering sympathy and support that felt genuine. "Jason, I'm so sorry about everything you've been going through," said Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the hospital's chief information officer. "Megan seemed like such a lovely woman. You just never know what's going on behind closed doors." "Thank you, Sarah. It's been a difficult time, but I'm focusing on moving forward." "That's the right attitude, and I have to say, the way you've handled everything has been remarkably professional. A lot of men would have made a public spectacle of themselves." If only she knew. As dinner was served, I took my seat at a table with other local business owners. Megan was across the room with her parents and their social circle, trying to maintain an appearance of normalcy while fielding whispered conversations and sideways glances. The evening's program began with speeches from hospital officials, thanking the community for their support and highlighting the impact of charitable donations on pediatric care. The presentations were moving, genuine, and reminded me that there were bigger issues in the world than my personal vendetta. But not tonight. Tonight was about justice. During the dessert course, I excused myself and walked to the hotel's business center, where I'd arranged for a special delivery earlier in the day. A large envelope waited for me at the front desk, containing printed copies of documents that told the complete story of Megan and Brandon's affair. Text messages, photos, financial records, hotel receipts, expense reports, a comprehensive timeline that showed not just the adultery, but the fraud, deception, and professional misconduct that had accompanied it. I returned to the ballroom and began distributing copies to key tables. Not everyone. That would have been crude. Just the people who mattered. Business leaders, community pillars, social influencers, the kind of people who would ensure the information spread through Portland's elite circles like wildfire. I thought the community should know what kind of people they've been doing business with, I explained quietly to each recipient. Make your own judgments about the character issues involved. The reaction was immediate and electric. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as people absorbed what they were reading. Phones appeared as recipients began photographing the most damning pages. The comfortable social atmosphere turned tense and predatory. Megan noticed the change before she understood its cause. I watched her scan the room, seeing the stares and whispered conversations, the phones pointed in her direction, the gradual isolation as her table companions found excuses to step away. When someone finally showed her one of the document packets, her face went white. She looked across the room and found me watching her with calm satisfaction. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a sound that carried across the ballroom. Several dozen people turned to watch as she gathered her purse and coat, her movements sharp and desperate. "Leaving so soon?" her mother asked loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "I don't feel well," Megan replied, her voice cracking. "Perhaps you should have thought about that before you decided to destroy your marriage," Patrick Donnelly said, his face red with embarrassment and anger. "You've humiliated this entire family." The public confrontation between Megan and her parents became the evening's entertainment. 3 years of suppressed disappointment and social embarrassment erupted in a series of accusations and recriminations that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with their own damaged relationships. You had a good man, and you threw it away for what? Some cheap affair with a married developer who's now facing bankruptcy? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're selfish, entitled, and you've made fools of all of us. Megan fled the ballroom in tears, pushing past curious onlookers and hotel staff. Her parents remained at their table, stone-faced and humiliated, while their social circle buzzed with speculation and judgment. I finished my dessert and ordered another coffee. The evening's final speaker was Dr. James Harrison, the hospital's chief of staff, who delivered a moving presentation about the importance of community support for children's health care. His words reminded the audience why they were there, shifting focus away from the personal drama and back to the charitable cause. But the damage was done. By the time the gala ended, everyone in Portland's business community knew the complete story of Megan and Brandon's affair, along with the professional and financial misconduct that had accompanied it. As guests filed out of the ballroom, several people stopped by my table to offer support and business cards. The consensus seemed to be that I'd handled a difficult situation with remarkable restraint and dignity. "If you ever need anything, Jason, don't hesitate to call," said Robert Chen, president of the city's largest bank. "What you've been through, well, let's just say you've shown real class in how you've responded." If only they knew how much class I'd really shown. I was one of the last people to leave the hotel. As I walked through the lobby, I passed the bar where Megan sat alone, still in her evening gown, staring into a glass of wine with the hollow expression of someone whose world had just collapsed. She looked up as I passed, her eyes red from crying. "Are you satisfied now?" she asked. I paused, considering the question seriously. "You know what, Megan? I think I am. You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my family relationships. Brandon's business is finished. His marriage is over. Was it worth it? You destroyed those things when you decided to have an affair. I just made sure everyone knew about it. This isn't the man I married. The man you married was a fool who trusted his wife and believed in his marriage. That man died the morning I found those text messages. What you're seeing now is what replaced him." She started to respond, but I was already walking away. Outside the hotel, Portland's downtown sparkled in the night air. The city looked the same as it had that morning, but everything had changed. By tomorrow, the story of tonight's revelations would be common knowledge throughout the business community. Megan's reputation was destroyed beyond repair. Brandon's career was finished, and I was free. 3 months later, I was sitting in my expanded downtown office, reviewing contracts for new cybersecurity projects that had materialized in the wake of my newfound reputation as a man who could handle crisis with dignity and professionalism. The irony wasn't lost on me. Destroying my wife's life had actually improved my business prospects. Alex knocked on my door frame, holding a cup of coffee and wearing the satisfied expression of someone with good news to share. "Thought you'd want to know. Brandon Lee Development just filed for bankruptcy. Complete liquidation. The house in Falmouth is going into foreclosure next month." I looked up from my laptop. "What about Brandon himself?" "Moved back in with his parents in Biddeford. His wife kept the kids and got a restraining order after he showed up drunk at her apartment last week. Apparently, he's been blaming everyone except himself for his problems." "And Megan?" "Still living with her parents, as far as I know. Carmen says she's been applying for real estate jobs in other states, but word travels fast in that industry. Nobody wants to hire someone with her reputation." I nodded and returned to my work. In the months since the charity gala, I deliberately avoided seeking updates about my ex-wife and her former lover. Their destruction had been so complete and public that information reached me without any effort on my part. The divorce had been finalized 6 weeks ago. Megan had indeed honored her promise of an uncontested settlement, probably because her lawyer had explained how much worse things could get if she tried to fight. I kept the house, the business, and all our shared assets. She kept her debts and her damaged reputation. Toby appeared in my doorway, practically bouncing with excitement. Boss, you need to see this. Remember that anonymous tip line we set up for reporting unethical business practices? What about it? Someone just submitted a report about a real estate agent in Massachusetts who's been falsifying her credentials and work history. The complaint includes copies of fake references and altered employment records. He handed me a printed report that detailed how Margaret Cole, Megan had apparently started using her middle name, had been lying about her previous experience and the circumstances of her departure from Coastal Properties. The complainant says they recognized her from some viral video about a hotel fire alarm, and they got suspicious when her story didn't match what they found online. I scanned the document, impressed despite myself at the thoroughness of the investigation. Someone had really done their homework, cross-referencing Megan's claims against public records and social media posts. Any idea who filed the complaint? Toby grinned. The IP address traces back to a coffee shop in Salem, Massachusetts, but the writing style and attention to detail reminds me of someone we know who works in the real estate industry and has a talent for research. Carmen. She'd moved to Boston 2 months ago for a new job with a commercial real estate firm, but apparently she was still keeping tabs on her former boss's attempts at career rehabilitation. Should we do anything with this information? Toby asked. I considered the question. Megan was already destroyed professionally and personally. Exposing her latest deception would just be piling on at this point. But then I remembered her words from that night at the hotel bar. This isn't the man I married. She was right. The man she'd married would have shown mercy. Forward the complaint to the Massachusetts Real Estate Commission, I said. They deserve to know what kind of person they're dealing with. My phone rang before Toby could respond. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. Jason Cole. Mr. Cole, this is Detective Rhonda Clark with the Portland Police Department. I'm calling about a harassment complaint that was filed against you yesterday. I leaned back in my chair, unsurprised. Let me guess. Megan Donnelly claims I've been stalking her or interfering with her life somehow. Actually, the complaint was filed by Brandon Lee. He alleges that you've been conducting a systematic campaign to destroy his business and personal relationships through cyberstalking, harassment, and possibly illegal computer intrusions. That's an interesting theory. Does Mr. Lee have any evidence to support these allegations? That's what I'm trying to determine. Mr. Cole, I'm going to ask you directly. Have you engaged in any illegal activities targeting Brandon Lee or your ex-wife? I chose my words carefully. Detective Clark, I've never broken any laws in my dealings with either of those individuals. Everything I've done has been legal, documented, and justified by their own actions. That's not exactly a denial. It's an accurate statement. If Mr. Lee believes he's been the victim of criminal activity, he's welcome to provide evidence to support that claim. But I think you'll find that his problems stem from his own poor choices, not from any illegal actions on my part. I see. And the timing of his business failures, the exposure of his personal conduct, the various technical problems he's experienced. You're saying that's all coincidental? I'm saying that when someone conducts an affair with a married woman, falsifies business records, and engages in professional misconduct, there are natural consequences. If Mr. Lee is looking for someone to blame for his problems, he should start with a mirror. Detective Clark was quiet for a moment. Mr. Cole, I've been doing this job for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of revenge scenarios. Usually, they end badly for everyone involved. Are you sure you want to continue down this path? What path is that, Detective? The path where you've already won, but you keep fighting anyway. Your ex-wife's life is destroyed. Her lover's business is finished. You've got everything you wanted. Maybe it's time to move on. I appreciate the advice, Detective. Is there anything else I can help you with regarding Mr. Lee's complaint? Just this. If I find evidence that you've crossed legal lines in your pursuit of revenge, I will arrest you, regardless of what they did to you, regardless of how justified you feel. Are we clear? Perfectly clear. After hanging up, I sat in my office and considered Detective Clark's warning. She was right. I had won. Megan and Brandon were both destroyed, their reputations ruined, their careers finished. Continuing to pursue them served no practical purpose. But it felt good. Every new revelation about their struggles, every report of another failure or humiliation, brought a satisfaction that was almost addictive. They had tried to make a fool of me, and now the entire community knew who the real fools were. Alex appeared in my doorway again, this time looking concerned. "Everything okay? You look like you're planning someone's funeral." "Just thinking about Detective Clark's call. She thinks I should move on, let Megan and Brandon rebuild their lives." "What do you think?" I pulled up my computer's file directory, where I'd organized months of research into neat folders labeled with dates and categories. Financial records, communication logs, business documents, personal information. A complete digital dossier on two people who had underestimated the wrong man. "I think," I said slowly, "that some lessons need to be permanent." That evening, I drove to the harbor, the dive bar where Alex and I had celebrated the finalization of my divorce. It was the kind of place where working-class Portland went to drink beer and complain about life, far removed from the upscale establishments where Megan and Brandon had conducted their affair. I was halfway through my second beer when she walked in. Megan looked different, thinner, tired, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer clothes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup. She looked like what she'd become, a woman whose world had collapsed. She spotted me immediately and walked over to my table with the determined stride of someone who'd been planning this confrontation. "We need to talk," she said, sitting down without being invited. "I thought we'd said everything we needed to say. Brandon tried to eliminate himself last week." The words hit me like cold water. I set down my beer and studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception. I found only exhaustion and genuine distress. "What happened?" "Pills. His parents found him in time, but—" She shrugged helplessly. "He's in a psychiatric facility now. His kids don't even know where he is." I felt a strange disconnection from the information, as if she were telling me about strangers rather than people whose lives I'd systematically destroyed. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "Because I think part of you is probably pleased that your revenge was so effective." She wasn't wrong. There was a grim satisfaction in knowing that Brandon had been so thoroughly defeated that he preferred to disappear rather than face the consequences of his actions. But there was also something else, a recognition that maybe Detective Clark had been right about going too far. "What do you want from me, Megan?" "I want you to stop. Whatever you're still doing, whatever you're still planning, just stop. We're destroyed. You won. Isn't that enough?" I looked at my ex-wife across the scarred wooden table and tried to remember what I'd loved about her. The laugh that had made me feel clever and important. The way she'd curl up against me during movies. The ambitious dreams we'd shared about building a life together. All of that was gone, replaced by the cold satisfaction of complete victory. "You're right," I said finally. "It is enough." "Really? Really? I'm done with both of you. You can tell Brandon, if he's in any condition to understand, that he's safe from me. I have no interest in kicking a man when he's already down that far." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, Megan. I'm not doing this out of kindness or forgiveness. I'm doing it because continuing would be pointless. You're both finished. There's nothing left to destroy." She flinched at the coldness in my voice, but nodded. "I suppose that's the best I can hope for." "It is." She stood to leave, then paused. "Jason, for what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just about getting caught, about all of it. You deserved better than what I gave you." "Yes," I agreed. "I did." After she left, I sat in the bar for another hour, nursing my beer and thinking about the conversation. Detective Clark had been wrong about one thing. I hadn't continued fighting because I couldn't stop. I'd continued because I'd discovered something about myself that was both liberating and terrifying. I was very good at destroying people who crossed me, and I enjoyed it. But she'd been right about the important thing. I had won. Completely, permanently, devastatingly. Megan and Brandon would spend years, maybe decades, dealing with the consequences of their actions and my response to them. Their reputations were destroyed beyond repair. Their careers were finished. Their personal relationships were shattered, and I was free to build whatever life I wanted from the ashes of my marriage. I finished my beer and walked out into the Portland night. The city looked the same as always, but I saw it differently now. Not as a place where I'd been betrayed and humiliated, but as a place where I'd learned what I was truly capable of when pushed too far. 3 months ago, I'd been Jason Cole, the faithful husband and successful businessman who'd been made a fool of by his cheating wife. Tonight, I was Jason Cole, the man who'd systematically destroyed 2 people's lives with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a predator. The transformation was complete. The revenge was finished. And I had never felt more alive.